welcome to the Oregonian Sports Podcast. I am Bill Oram, joined, just like last week and every week before that, by Brenna Greene, Coin 6 anchor reporter. Brenna, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Brenna, I want to start kind of where we left off last week.
You know it's good. When we got done with the pod, and a few hours later, we had a phone call in which I had to say, save it for the pod.
So you said at the end of the podcast last week that your only real hope for Oregon State's spring game was that they would step it up in terms of, fan engagement, the fan experience, basically add a little more razzle to their dazzle, because last year was a pretty big letdown, especially amid a moment when Oregon State is, still trying to polish its brand after, the gut punch of Pac-12 realignment, or realignment and, the reformation of the Pac-12. Did they do that?
Well, hours after that podcast, not even really hours. It might have been like an hour after. I got a text from our media contact down at OSU saying, hey, can you give me a call? I called him and he said, I want to let you know that the coaching staff has decided to not let people shoot the spring game. So media could not record clips from the spring game. That is because of the insanity that is now college football and the spring transfer window. And so they don't want to have clips of their players out there in case other coaches come in and try to poach them.
In case they're watching Coin 6 at 10.
So there is the reasoning. There was nowhere that you could see Oregon State's spring game. After watching it afterwards, I saw somebody ask Trent Bray about the amount of players who did not play in the game. And he said that the game was really for the younger players to get more reps, to which I say, not sure if I totally believe that, but okay. I think there may have been a reason why you didn't want to use some of your better players. And I don't know who didn't play and who did not play, because I said last week on the pod that we were going to go. We did not go. Because as a TV station, if I can't get footage of your event, there's no reason for me to make a 3-hour round trip drive. It's just not worth my time.
So I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I'm curious from just a logistical standpoint real quick. Yeah. Like, did you explain that to viewers of the broadcast during sports, like why there wasn't footage of the Oregon State spring game? Hey, kitty cat. Brenna's cat just jumped up on just made an appearance. That was cute.
It's been a little bit. So he wanted to say hi.
Or was it just sort of an unaddressed sort of gap? Because I feel like the responsibility would be of course, we're going to show you the spring game, or we're going to show you the highlights of the spring game, but we can't do that.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, how you handled that on TV.
Well, two things. One, I know that Adam Bjornson, our sports director, mentioned it on Thursday after I got the phone call in his newscast, and said that he was not a fan of the decision. And then Saturday, I was not anchoring because I was supposed to not be anchoring to begin with. Because I was supposed to be going to the spring game. Yeah. So I instead went to Winterhawks, which was an all-time blowout. Anyway, so I know that Jamie, our sports anchor, said she had like a video portion in her sportscast. And I said to her, first of all, I don't think they're sending video. Secondly, they're telling you not to cover it by saying that they are by not letting us shoot it. And as of that time, and I think it still remains the case, give me 1 second to look this up, but as of that time, OSU hadn't even posted sound on their YouTube channel from the game. Now that might be different now, but nope, they never posted anything. So if you are going to show me that you, quite frankly, don't really want us to cover this, then I told her it's not worth it to put in your sportscast. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know if she addressed it or not. I think she might not have. But it's just not like, they did let media ask questions afterwards and obviously record that. But we weren't down there for that. So we can't just take something from another station or from another outlet and run it on our airwaves. That's against protocol. So, when they don't post either thing, okay, you want us to ignore this game, obviously. So that's just how it goes. Them's the breaks in life. I don't know what else to say. So, yeah, I mean, I don't really understand why they had a spring game to begin with. Like, if this is how it's going to be, then why are we all out here, quite frankly, wasting our time? So, I'd be pretty surprised if there's a spring game at Oregon State next year. Let's put it that way. I think that maybe that was something that was kind of set up because this is what we always do, blah, 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 blah. And then the coaching staff was like, whoa, we got to change some things. And now it's just like, just do one of those open practices that nobody cares about. Because obviously, by your actions, you're telling me that you don't care about this game. So I don't know why we're all trying to lie here. So it's unfortunate. It's disappointing for the fans, but it's not like I don't understand what they're doing. It's not like I'm like, oh, like this is the stupidest decision ever and blah, blah, blah. I get why they're doing what they're doing, but at the same point in time, then there's ramifications for every action. And in this situation, the ramification was we just didn't cover it. And, that's your own decision. I said to you on the phone, I said, if I'm them, I want to show off my brand. And I said this to OSU too. I said, if I'm you guys, I want to show off your brand new quarterback to the state and get some hype around your program.
Right.
Like, I want to be able to show Malik throwing a 40-yard bomb like Aiden Childs did 2 years ago, and everybody went goo goo gaga over it. That helped hype Aiden Childs up a significant amount, that one play. So, it's unfortunate because now this team kind of goes into the off season with no sparkle, I guess. Oh yeah. Bill's Mike has some opinions about this as well. Yeah. So there you go. That's I think that covers kind of how I feel. I told the person at OSU, I'm like, look, there's things to fight for in life. This is not one of them. Like, I'm not, he thanked me for not, having a cataclysmic reaction. And I was like, look, like, this is your guys' decision. There are other things that I would get upset about, but you know what? This is not worth me getting that upset about it. At the same point in time, I'm going to sit here and voice how I feel, but I don't think anybody can say that I'm upset. I think it's just like, well, these are the decisions you've made. So there you go.
Yeah, so I do appreciate you saving it for the podcast instead. But I also think that there's just a lot to unpack here, and it's a little bit inside baseball, a little media centric, but I also think this goes to something I talked about a year ago with Oregon State and the spring game, because you only have so many opportunities to engage with fans and to build that excitement. And, the Beavers would tell you, hey, we don't have any trouble, putting butts in seats, we sell out. And it's like, that's maybe true on paper, but like, there were a lot of games last year where there were a lot of empty seats. There was I think, real lack of excitement around a lot of the games that they had last year, especially once they started losing some. But I think that there's in a moment where all excitement is good excitement. And so I completely agree with you on every point. While I also acknowledge that, poaching is real and the transfer portal, it can be devastating. I think the Beavers, as much or more than any program, has every right to be paranoid about it. And so, obviously structurally, there is something amiss with the way the transfer portal operates, is scheduled. It's like, but in this reality, I can see how a coaching staff landed here I think that like what I come back to is, football coaches can be so like in their silo of like football. And that's great. That's your job. You're paid millions of dollars for that, but you're not just the coach of a football team. You're also the CEO of a brand, and it's not a good brand if nobody can see it. And I don't think a spring game is the end all be all of, the quality of your brand. I mean, I think it's a small piece of it, but again, I go back to like you said, how are you getting people bought back in on Oregon State football? How are you getting people excited for what's to come? And, Malik Murphy is going to have people very excited come August. People are going to be excited about Malik Murphy. But if I'm Oregon State and if I'm Malik Murphy, I want people excited about me now. Start that now. You mentioned the Aiden Childs pass from a couple years ago. How about that Tez Johnson catch in his first spring game at Oregon State when he caught a ball from Ty Thompson? Like, it was, a spring game is just the right amount of catnip for a fan base kind of in the spring, an opportunity to sort of give you something to sort of look back on and hold on to going into the fall. And you're right that a lot of schools have done away with spring games. I guess I just don't really understand Oregon State's attempt to split the baby here. Like, why are you having the spring game if you don't want anybody to see it? Like, does a tree fall in the woods? Yeah. And I get that, hey, if you want to see it, you can get off your butt and you can go to Reser Stadium, and enjoy a day at the stadium with your family. But I just would argue that Oregon State has not done enough to make that a great fan experience for people who, might need a little bit more than just, hey, the team's going to be on the field. And that's currently what they offer. Oregon, spring game coming up on Saturday, and it's not a fair comparison because Oregon has made just a different calculation about its spring game. They have made it an event. They have made it a rock concert. Mm-hmm. Quite literally. Okay, fine. It's a folk concert, yes. But like they've made it an event, and where it's, like I was talking to a friend who has a kid that wanted to go to the Oregon spring game. Starts at 1:00. They're on my T-ball team, which is the reason I couldn't go to the Oregon State spring game, because big T-ball game against team like Greene on Saturday. My kid caught a line drive. Just want to say, team red all the way. But they were like, "Oh, we want to go to the spring game."
I appreciate the delineation between green and light green.
There's a team dark green too. There's only so many colors. So there's a team light green, team dark green. Southwest Portland Little League, there's a lot of teams. We've got a lot of teams. That's why we had to delineate. And they were like, we could get there in time for like kickoff, but like that's not why you go to the Oregon spring game. You go because of all the stuff that's happening in the Mo Center and like all the family like friendly stuff that you do before the spring game. And I think that that's what Oregon State has chosen to leave on the table and has chosen not to take advantage of, is that you have people who are like ready to come out of their house for the first time in 4 months because winter is long and dark and dreary, and a chance to go see something that's going to like, be part of something. And I think Oregon State has chosen to be like, hey, we are going to just make this about the football. And, that appeals to a certain audience, but not as much as you could have. And I think if you could, get more people there, more butts in seats, more excitement, give more people a reason to go, all the better. And same with the footage filming. Like, okay, I couldn't go. I wanted to go, but I'd like to watch. I want to see Malik Murphy. I want to see this defense. Like I said last week on the podcast that I thought Oregon State was going to be pretty good. And that my question was going to be like, hey, is that defense going to be improved? By all accounts, like people who've watched the Beavers in the spring, people at the spring game, have reported back that Oregon State's defense is going to be just fine. Like they've got dudes there. Like the reason, like Jack Conte left is because there's so many good dudes. Like Jack Conte was one of their best defensive players last year. And, basically he was like, there's not enough reps here for me. So there are there's a real belief in that defense. But what about the offensive line? The offensive line lost a lot of guys yet again because they've done so well there. The bar's been set so high. Like, there's real football questions that would be fun to be able to discuss about Oregon State, but like they make it hard to see it. Like, the spring game is your showcase. Did they call it the spring showcase this year? Was that what it was technically called? It was last year. And when you have something that's called a showcase and you don't showcase it, it feels like you're pulling in opposite directions. And so my appeal to Trent Bray would be to remember that you are not just the coach of the 22 guys you have on the field. You are also the CEO of a brand. You are the chief marketing officer. You are all these things. And, Oregon State fans, they will show up if the team is winning. And that is ultimately the thing that matters. But I do think you need to nurture their care along the way and not just be like, oh, hey, we trust that you'll show up when we're winning. Like, we give them a reason to show up, when it's the spring. And that was my ringtone, which, yes, you might have noted is the theme song of the Oregonian Sports Podcast. I am nothing if not a company man. But that brings us, Brenna, to a whole host of other things that are going on. We had yesterday a groundbreaking out in Hillsborough for the joint NWSL WNBA facility that the Bethal family is building. The Winterhawks are on to the Western Conference Finals. The Blazers are doing nothing. And the Portland Diamond Project saw its push for state bonding for a potential MLB stadium fly through the state Senate. I watched Senator Mark Meek sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" on the Senate floor. It was a thing. Like, did you watch the vote by any chance last week? Because your face is telling me no.
No, I did not.
At the beginning of the vote, and when the legislators are getting up on the floor and giving their speeches, Mark Meek, who was sponsoring the bill, Democrat of Gladstone, said, "I will not sing." And then what did he do? He sang at the very end. It was a "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." And Mark Meek, I will just say, needs to brush up on some of his baseball references if he's going to speak off the cuff, because he was like trying to tell a story from his childhood about going to an A's game, and he's like, and there was that Orioles great Eddie, and then somebody off camera had to say Murray, and he's like, yeah, Eddie Murray, and then before he's saying "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," he's like, it's just like that guy from the Cubs, and somebody off camera, Harry Carey, yeah, Harry Carey. So, but I'll tell you what, I love an enthusiastic state legislator over something that is, relatively non-controversial and where they can just be a goof, because so much of what happens in the the chambers can be so dry. That we had the state Senate singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," I thought was a joy. Don't know that we need to spend a whole lot of time on the Senate Bill 110, which we've talked about, the $800 million in financing that the state is considering. But it is going to pass. It is going to get signed by the governor. And what it is going to do is establish a baseline for this, pipe dream, however you want to look at it, to at least progress and see what they can do. Like, okay, now you have this tool in your pocket to go make an appeal to Major League Baseball. Do you have any thoughts on this before we move on?
It doesn't. I mean, I'm happy for them that it passed, but I don't know if it changes what the reality actually is.
Fair. I think that's totally fair. So, and the other thing I would say, I worry that, I get nervous when I see like this level of enthusiasm, and it's a question not of like, should we like establish this funding mechanism or elevate this financing mechanism in the event baseball might come someday, or that this could, this relatively small chance could land. It's not that conversation. It's singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" and playing to nostalgia and going to baseball. I love baseball so much. I hate that we have to drive to Seattle. Like, gosh, it's great. Don't you just love the splendor of the grass and the crack of the bat? It's like, once you have people kind of on the hook being excited about baseball again, as opposed to sort of the like the process of trying to, like, I get that that's how you drum up support, but, you know, I do worry that you're setting people up for real disappointment if, you know, it's like you're taking the necessary steps to establish a framework that could work for something that still feels like it's a bit of a long shot. And for people who are interested in this, which if you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure is you, I would really encourage you to read the story that Mike Rogaway, my colleague at the Oregonian, did yesterday in yesterday's Oregonian on Oregon Live, that really addressed some of the real questions around the financing model, and some of the questions just around the project in general. I think it did a really good job of you know, raising those questions, answering them to the best of the ability at this point of what the information we have. And, you know, like even the people who are skeptics, right? People who've looked at this and like are economists and people who are like, I'm not sure that like the financing really pencils. Even those people are saying, but there's no harm in passing the bill to see where it goes. And I think that that's like kind of where we're at right now, is like, there's no harm in seeing this through to the next step, and let's see what's available at the next step. So baseball.
And I think the other side of the coin, when you're talking about, you know, people getting excited and being let down, I think there's just as many people who are kind of like me that are like, all right, like that aren't necessarily like who see the bill getting passed and are like, well, that's all fine and dandy. You know, there's a lot of people who see that bill get passed and are kind of apathetic
because it's not the like baseball is coming. Like it's not because we still don't have the baseball is taking Portland seriously. Like this is still a one-way conversation. And I think what this does is it creates a more inviting dialogue for baseball to get involved. And I think like, listen, I think Portland has a chance. You know, I don't know what number you'd put on it, but I think there's a chance that this could happen. And so if there's a 5% chance, 2% chance, I think it's worth seeing through.
And I mean, you know, I have to look back at everything that happened with the WNBA. Like, I think before things went belly up with the first bid for the WNBA, I really, I was skeptical, even when Kathy came to Portland, that it was actually going to come here. So, I mean, you know, I've been proven wrong before. I will happily be proven wrong. I will eat my crow baby. But, you know, just right now, I tend to be, like I said, I tend to be apathetic towards things until I see actual real movement from the other side.
Until you see shovels in the dirt, perchance.
Segue on to the next
yesterday
thing.
You and I were out in Hillsborough for a groundbreaking for the Thal family's women's sports empire in Hillsborough. Did I already say Hillsborough? Off of 185th, they are going to build, as we know, a joint training facility for the NWSL's Thorns and the yet to be named WNBA franchise that is going to start playing in Portland in like 17 minutes. Like, we're 12 months away. This team is going to start. Needs a name. This team needs a name.
This team needs a name, and also, I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be thoroughly impressed if this thing opens on time. I don't see how you can do all the things that they need to do in a year. But, you know, see what happens. I'm standing out there. There's some office buildings. There's a pitch that isn't really a pitch. A soccer that, you know, definitely is not regulation. It's not ready
for a professional team. It was good for a youth clinic yesterday.
Exactly. There's a lot of work to be done, and I don't really understand how it's all going to get done in the next year.
You don't have confidence in Hoffman Construction? Come on, those guys can work miracles.
I mean, like I said, I've you know, been a part of a lot. I mean, okay, let's let's look at it this way. I mean, when did it was sometime during the summer last year that the Hillsborough Hops had the groundbreaking for their, it was wait, no. It was, it was like late July when the Hops had the groundbreaking for their stadium. That stadium is not going to open until March, April of next year. That's a 2-year project. It is, absolutely. And I'm not saying that they're building a stadium. But I mean, 2 soccer pitches, two basketball courts, and having to revamp all the buildings there and make everything up to, that's a lot to do. And I mean, realistically for the soccer side, like 8 months. I've been working on my garage office for 12 months and it's nowhere near done. Working on a bit of a loose use of the term. I think that's going to be interesting to see. I mean, obviously there's a real crunch, right? Like you need to have this, you need to at least have the primary spaces ready to go. Like if offices need to be like in modulars at the beginning, that's okay. But you need to have a gym, training facility, locker room, like trainer's room, like ready to go. So, I mean, these are real things. You're not wrong. That said, I got to say that if there's one thing that I've learned about the Bethal family, about Lisa Bethal-Mirage and Alex Bethal, siblings, business partners, is that they can throw a pep rally. Because we saw that with I didn't go to the Thorns sale announcement. I'm sure you were there. So I don't know what that one was like.
I had a conflict. Not there for that.
I actually was writing about baseball. I was writing a baseball column last year on Breaking News on when it was like about the Lloyd Center deal when that happened. And then many versions of baseball ago. And the WNBA announcement, was a great, pep rally. I mean, and then the one yesterday, I mean, you heard from, maybe it's just Senator Ron Wyden. Maybe it's just once Ron Wyden is involved, like Ron Wyden brings the party.
The man brings something. He certainly brings enthusiasm. As Karina LeBlanc said, a man who needs no hype. He is his own hype
obviously,
man.
He's doing serious work. I mean, and this is serious work too. I don't want to diminish it, but obviously this is like kind of a critical time for the American government. And like, he's been very busy. He's on a little bit of a barnstorming tour of smaller communities around Oregon, trying to hit all the counties. I've got to think that stopping by to do a groundbreaking and like rock some puns is levity for him. Like it's a nice like way to mix it, to break up, like the real like sort of, frankly, like, a lot of legislating can be a little bit dry. And this guy, it's like, there will be nothing dry about him coming to like hype up women's sports or sports in Portland in general. Like that guy does bring the party.
I have to say one anecdote, which I think you will find entertaining. So when Ron Wyden got there, I noticed that there was this, suited up man who was near him, and I soon came to realize that was his security detail, U.S. Ranger. The only reason why I know that is because he had a pin on his suit that said like Rangers or whatever. And as I was standing next to this gentleman, a lady came up and was like, "Oh, nice to see you, blah, blah, blah." And she was like, "This is a lot more fun than a lot of the other things we do."
I would imagine that being an elected official, and I'm going to say that again. I would imagine that being an elected official is a lot of shoveling dirt, or maybe this is an improvement because most of being an elected official is shoveling shit.
Earmuffs, children.
I'm trusting that podcast producer extraordinaire, podcast producer extraordinaire Kelly Doyle will get me a little bit of a bleep on that one. And if not, you know what? This show's not for kids.
Hanging loose over here, baby. Yeah. No, it was just such a funny thing to overhear two people who obviously have some sort of role within like security for these politicians. Having this little anecdote conversation of, well, this is a lot more fun than most of the other things we go to. I was like, that is fair. That is absolutely fair. But yes, you are correct. They do know how to put on an event. They know how to throw a party. That makes sense, by the way, considering their ties and what they're from. They're from, you know, the fashion world. Fashion is all about putting on an event, putting on a show, doing things right. So,
well, and I would also say they're, you know, minority owners in the Sacramento Kings. And if there's one franchise that knows about doing things the right way, it is the Sacramento Kings. And if there's one franchise that knows how to make it feel like a party, it's the Sacramento Kings.
Well, they do have Light the Beam. I'll give them that.
They just didn't get to light the beam as much this year.
Yeah.
So, Brenna, all of this dovetails into the next big event on the calendar, which is the spring game that is a party, Oregon. We've touched on what Oregon does and what makes it an event that you actually want to go to and take your kids to, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there is the football to be considered. And Oregon is coming off of a season with national championship aspirations, national championship beliefs, and I think real disappointment that there wasn't a national championship. I mean, getting smoked by Ohio State in the Rose Bowl was a real awakening, a wake-up call for the Ducks. Maybe something we should have seen coming. I've written about this. I've talked about it. You know, I thought the Ducks, you know, looked a little bit more vulnerable against Penn State than we expected in the Big Ten championship. Month-long layoff. Who knows? We'll never know. But the Ducks enter this year with even higher expectations, but more unknowns. For the first time in 3 seasons, they will not be starting the season with a wildly experienced quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Not just wildly experienced. I mean, by the end of their tenure, both Bo Nix and Dylan Gabriel were the most experienced quarterbacks in the history of the sport. That is an enormous asset for these teams. Dante Moore might be better than both of them, just in terms of pure talent, pedigree, expectation. He's coming in as a sophomore, redshirt sophomore. He's going to, you know, have every opportunity here. Is it fair to put the kinds of expectations on Dante Moore, who started the majority of the season at UCLA before transferring to Oregon, that we put on Bo Nix, who came in after being a 3-year starter at Auburn, and that we put on Dylan Gabriel, who came in after, you know, starting, you know, 5 years, you know, all over the place. I mean, at UCF and Oklahoma. And is it fair? And how much do you think you can glean from a spring game when it comes to the question of, is he ready for it?
I think you can glean a little bit from a spring game for sure. You know, if you go out there and you have a not great performance, then that's something to think about. However, you know, I also look at, you know, going back to Oregon State spring game. If I remember correctly, DJ Uyunglele did not have exactly a sparkling performance in that spring game for his senior year. Now, we have to remember, he'd only been on campus for like 4 months. Dante has had a year to really, you know, hammer this down and get into this system. So, you know, I would hope that we would see a better performance from Dante than we did DJ in that scenario. So yeah, I think that there's definitely, let's put it this way. If he doesn't do well, there's going to be murmurs. If he does okay or above, nobody's going to say anything. It's not going to be one of those things that people are going to be like, oh, we're so excited about this guy if he has a great rip-roaring spring game, because I think everybody, yeah, that was something. That was really interesting that I just did, but I did that. And I think that I don't think anybody wants to put too much stock into a spring game. At the same point in time, if you don't do well, there will be chatter. So you just need to do serviceable, okay? Serviceable and above, we're good.
So it's just so interesting because like I would say that the Ducks are basically all in on Dante Moore. You know, he is the pretty clear-cut starter here. And I mean no disrespect to Austin Novosad, who has, you know, put in his time, you know, was a highly regarded recruit in his own right, you know, could very well be starting here or somewhere else. But like, I just don't think that I've never gotten the sense that the Ducks view Austin Novosad as the presumptive, you know, future of the position. Yeah. They did not go out and recruit another quarterback. They did not go out and get an experienced backup. Like they believe that they are set at that position and they like Dante Moore. And I think that's great. I just think it's very interesting in 2025 that they are, you know, 2025, the year of, you know, the transfer and, you know, NIL and poaching and all of this. Are those Minnie Mouse ears on your wall behind you?
They are. They've always been there.
I didn't know. It's like 27 podcasts in or whatever. We've done 50 of them. We've probably done 50 of them. And I've never noticed. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is that just for like when you go to Disney, like there's there?
You know, you might as well dress up the smoke detector or whatever that is. Yeah.
All right.
So there you go. Yeah. That's why they're there.
So I think it's interesting. I mean, obviously there is still some movement that could happen, you know, like, but I mean, all indications are the Ducks are set. And I thought that it was really interesting. Obviously the stuff that happened at Tennessee with Nico Yamaleva and him, you know, holding out, then bailing and getting forced out, transferring to UCLA. All that had a hint of Oregon to it with the idea that was floated that they had reached out to Oregon, like, hey, you interested in Nico? And the Ducks said no, and then ratted him out. But the reason they wouldn't have been interested in Nico, who was awesome as a freshman at Tennessee and took Tennessee to the CFP, was because they're that confident in Dante Moore. So, I mean, we've seen Dante Moore take what, like 15 snaps, if that?
Might be
at Oregon. I'm excited.
Yeah,
I'm excited. And like, I think that you have to put the high expectations on him of, you know, you want to see some great throws. You want to see some good decisions. You want to see some explosiveness. This is a guy that people at Oregon have been kind of drooling over for several years. He was an Oregon commit before he went to UCLA. Kind of felt like the one that got away because Bo came back for a last year, which I mean I think everybody felt was a worthwhile trade-off, but like you were trading upside for the immediacy of Bo. And then he came back. And so people have been like imagining him in this role for 3 years. What?
I said the prodigal son.
Yeah. So I just am, I think that pressure is on. I mean, we you know, when Decorian Moore says this is, you know, the Heisman favorite, and all of a sudden you see that in, you know, bearing out in like the early odds. I mean, this is a guy who's being talked about as a Heisman contender. And maybe part of that is system and visibility. The last two Oregon quarterbacks have been Heisman finalists. I just think all the pressure in the world, you know, should be put on this guy because that's what he signed up for.
That is true. It's really interesting to see Oregon's strategy in the transfer portal because, you know, obviously I follow Oregon pretty diligently. Mm-hmm. At the same point in time, there were players that they put up for media interviews this year that I was like, don't know him. Guess he transferred in. Okay. You know, so there's a lot of transfers, but then at other positions, there's some positions that have a lot of transfers, like the offensive line, for example, a ton of transfers there. And then other ones like quarterback or the linebacker room that took 0 transfers. And it's fascinating to see. And I really think that they have like this interesting transfer portal strategy where, like, you know, normally it's like, okay, we're either going to go all in or, I mean, nobody wants to be like Davo, but you know what I mean? But it's been very like position by position how they've done it. And some positions they've gone all in on the transfer portal, and others they're like, nah. And you know, like
we say all that knowing that Dante Moore was a transfer arrival, exactly, like a year ago. But yes, I understand your point. But I mean, like I kind of thought the Ducks would go get somebody at that position just to push him or to create a little bit of more competition. But I mean, it does tell you the amount that they value Novosad as somebody who can push Dante, or certainly be a complimentary QB to him as a backup.
Yes. Yeah. Obviously, yes. I understand that Dante was a transfer.
I just was saying, like, it's not like, I mean, they have some positions where they've been a little bit more homegrown, and quarterback.
To be fair, Dante almost doesn't feel like a transfer because he was supposed to come to Oregon. It's a weird situation.
And played for Chip.
Yeah, when he played for Chip. So it's like that whole situation is just a weird ring around the rosy thing.
Conspiracy. This was always the plan. He used UCLA. He used Chip Kelly. He was never all in as a Bruin. This was always a 1-year plan. Go get some reps at UCLA. Come back and be a Duck. I wonder how much Division Street paid him while he was at UCLA. Bill's Conspiracy Corner is becoming a bit of a weekly segment on the podcast, kind of like along with Bill's Book Corner. I have some thoughts on that, by the way. I have new books to add to Bill's Book Corner if we have time. But
that's exciting. Yeah. So we'll see. I am very interested to see how Saturday goes. I think even I was listening back to Will Stein's media availability on Tuesday, and he said in that media availability, he said, we're not going to throw everything out there in our playbook right now because this thing can be recorded and everybody can see it. I mean, it's on Big Ten Network. We're not throwing everything out there right now. And, he's compared this to a freshman football game. He said this is going to be more like a freshman football game. So even at, the level of Oregon that they're at, they're also playing it close to their vest, like Oregon State did more so closely to their vest. But, even they are, looking at this like, okay, like we're going to go out there and put on a freshman football game.
I think you have to, unless you just are. And I mean, I think Oregon probably has the most resources to ward off poaching of anybody in the country, along with Ohio State, and the most reason to be, secure with their players, because I think their stars are being very well taken care of. But I think it would be irresponsible to not be thinking about the poaching component of this. And that brings us back to the Oregon State piece. It's like, what safeguards and what measures do you need to take, or do you feel like you need to take to protect your product? And to insulate yourself from some of those concerns. I think that's completely valid. My point with Oregon State would be, then just don't do it. I don't think anybody would begrudge you if you said, we're not going to do it. What we're going to do instead is we're going to have a spring fan festival or something, or whatever. I don't know. But something where you're engaging your fans without like necessarily putting, it's like, oh, by the way, this guy we recruited from, Eastern Idaho is actually a future NFL guy, and he probably should be playing in the Big Ten and not in Corvallis, whatever.
Yeah. I just think it's good for fans to keep in mind that the Oregon offensive coordinator called this a freshman football game. So just remember that as you're watching. And with that context in mind, watch the game and make your own assumptions and decisions.
So how many series do you think that Dante Moore would need to have for you to feel like you got a satisfying look at him? 3?
No, I need more than that.
6? A half?
I think a half. I think a half is fine. I was stunned a few years ago when Bo Nix came out and played the second half of that spring game. I was like, all right, I see you, buddy. Like, okay. You could have easily said, I'm good here. I've done my job.
Yeah.
And he did not do that. So, which props to him. Still props to him for that. But yeah, I think if we get a half of Dante, I'll be satisfied.
Does Dylan Gabriel get drafted? And in what round? I mean, he's going to get drafted, but in what round do you think he goes?
6th.
6th, yeah. Could. I was thinking anywhere from 4 to 6. 4 would be high.
The height thing is just, it's tough. I just don't know if he's tall enough to be an NFL quarterback. But,
that's certainly the question.
As all things I say in this podcast, I'm happy to be proven wrong. So
it's one of those things where those are takes or decisions by NFL talent evaluators that can age really poorly.
Yep.
Where it's like, an NBA guy doesn't get drafted high enough because he's got small hands. Like Julius Randle, small hands. And he got drafted 7th, but it's like, multi-time All-Star, and he's a go-to player on a playoff team. It's like, maybe not the greatest example, but like some of these things don't age super well. It's like you were looking at the wrong thing with this guy. And I'm just going to be really interested to see what happens with Dylan Gabriel, because all the stuff he has going for him is real. Like, he is a gamer. He is tough. He does win. He does throw a great ball. He is, all those things. But like, if he can't see over the offensive line, like, it's not going to make a big difference. And I felt like that was an issue for him at Oregon. So it's going to be interesting in the NFL when those players are a lot bigger. But if he figures out how to navigate around that, like, I have real confidence he could be a successful NFL quarterback. And we would look back at this as like, how dumb to have made such a big deal about his height when he had years and years of experience of showing that he could compensate for it with his heart.
I think that's a perfect place to end this podcast. We do want to give one shout out to the Portland Winterhawks, right?
Back in the Western Conference Finals.
I cannot believe it. I cannot believe they did it. I mean, this is not the year that
nobody believed in them.
Yeah, but that's actually like legitimately true here. I mean, I didn't see this one coming. They were a 5th seed. Yeah. They, this was not the year that they were slated to go to the Western Conference Finals. They lost so much from last year's team. And here we are. They're back at it. So, and you have a first-year head coach. And yes, Kyle Gustafson had been around that team for a really, really long time. Yep. And Mike Johnson is still there as the GM. I get that. But it's still different.
Yeah. And where are they going to be playing in the Western Conference Finals? Who are they going to be playing in the Western Conference Finals?
You had to do this. You had to do this. They're playing Spokane.
Oh my gosh. Can you shush about Spokane and Gonzaga? All you do is bring it back to Gonzaga and Spokane. Like, this is getting old. Like, do that on your own podcast, like the Brenna Greene, like Gonzaga Appreciation Hour. But on the Oregonian Sports Podcast, I'm going to need less Gonzaga hagiography. Please.
Graham E.K., Braden Huff coming back. Anyways, anybody who does not follow college basketball is like, who are those people that Brenna just talked about? Gonzaga's 2 posts are back for next season. It's exciting. By the way, did you see that Ben Gregg put his name in the transfer portal just in case the NCAA offers another year of eligibility?
Oh, I did not.
Yeah. He's still focused on pro sports and all that sort of stuff.
I love that I gave you a hard time, and then you just took that as license to start talking about Gonzaga basketball.
Of course. But hey, I did have a local tie in here with Ben Gregg.
That's true. Clackamas legend.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Anyways, there you go. Yeah, Spokane, Friday, Sunday. Back here, I don't think the schedule's out yet for the rest of the series, but there you go.
All right. You heard it here first.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to the Oregonian Sports Podcast. I am Bill Oram. Brenna Greene will be bringing you live updates from Spokane with the Winterhawks this weekend. Maybe.
Yeah, I did think about marching into my office today and going, so, I think it's time we send me back to Spokane again. I think that's totally logical, right? Right? I don't think I'm going to win that one.
Find out if Brenna wins that one next week on the Oregonian Sports Podcast.